Hi, I'm Kenny Klaus, and this is State 48 Homeowner.
Hey everybody, welcome to the State 48 Homeowner Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the top mistakes the buyers and sellers are making in today's market. And we've got a couple of great guests with us today. Steve Farrington from Unity Home Loans. How you doing, Steve?
Awesome, Scott. How are you, brother?
Oh, groovy. And Kraig from the Klaus team. Kraig, Klaus, how you doing?
Incredibly great, man. Glad to be here.
So before we dive in, we've got a different market right now.
Yes.
And what's different about it right now?
Yeah, I wanted to kind of just do the normal update kind of on current market conditions. We're kind of plodding along in the resale market right now. Our total monthly sales were down 21% in July compared to June. Active listing counts were down about 2.5%. We're still putting between 1,700 to 1,900 homes a week under contract in the market, so there definitely is activity. New listings are down. New listings coming to market are down 40% from last year and 36% from the year before. Basically, they're calling it an unprecedented. The new supply coming to market is unprecedented, having a far bigger impact on the market than affordability and the affordability caused by higher interest rates. So there's a lot going on with that. One of the things that Cromford talked about in there was that, for prices to fall, we have to have an excess supply compared to demand. Even though demand is weak, supply actually got 2.6% smaller. There's a very low delinquency rate in residential real estate lending right now. And on that, because I did a Google search to see what people are searching on the internet for with regard to real estate, yes, and it was foreclosure is a big one of them. The principal economist at CoreLogic that May's overall mortgage delinquency rate matched the all-time low, and serious delinquencies followed suit. The rate of mortgages that were 6 months or more past due, a measure that ballooned in 2021, has receded to a level last observed in March of 2020. The Mortgage Bankers Association just reported that mortgage rate delinquency has fallen to its lowest level since they started tracking this metric in 1980. The other thing was bubble, and I don't have much on that except to say that Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, disclosed $814 million in investments across 3 home builders this week.
Yeah,
he knows a little bit about what's going on. And actually, Goldman Sachs revised their home price forecast for this year. They had it originally down 2.2%. Now they have it up 1.8%. And that's nationally. I think locally we'll probably finish a little above that. And they've also revised it for next year up from 2.8 to 3.5%.
Yeah, and when we look at the whole foreclosure thing, it makes a ton of sense. People are, when you talk about secured debt, not only is it secured by your home, but that home has equity, and that home most likely has a pretty low interest rate that you just can't go trade it out on.
Right.
And so it's a much more secured debt than it has been in as long as we can remember.
It's over 60% of the homes have at least 50% equity. So between your own free and clear and having at least 50% equity, it's over 60% of the homes.
Yeah, and we're just saying, when we look at 2008, it looks like this was 16 million, and now we're just in the thousands.
Correct. Yeah, it barely even shows up on the chart.
So, in this crazy market, let's talk about some mistakes that buyers and sellers are making. Let's start with sellers. When we look at buyers, it's low inventory.
Sure.
Sellers, it's demand is there, but it's less demand than we're used to. It's demand is fine for the inventory that we have, but it's less than we're used to. So sellers kind of have to make sure that they're playing the right game. So what mistakes are you seeing?
Well, I think the biggest thing right now is presentation. Meaning, is the home ready to go on the market? Is it in move-in ready condition? Because today's buyers, like everybody, are tapped out. They're going to what they can afford, a monthly payment. They have them, they've saved hopefully for the money down, and closing costs, they don't have the money to go in and fix it. You can do credits to a certain extent. That still requires work from the buyer, and they're already adding up as they walk up to the house and or into the house, things that they'd have to do. They don't have a lot of choices, but there are choices for them. And when I talk with my sellers, we talk about days on market versus showings. And historically they were kind of went hand in hand in terms of what that was telling us as far as the market telling us. Today, if you have 5 people through, that's the equivalent of having 10 through in a normal market. And typically we've said 8 to 10 showings without an offer indicates price in a normal situation. So if we get 4 or 5 people through, that's actually to me more of a concern if they're not making an offer than if we've been on the market 30 days, because there's just less activity. So I see some where you can only show it for certain hours during certain days at certain times. That's not going to be in the seller's best interest right now, because you have to make it available because, normally showings occur over the weekends, but, I've had listings with nothing over the weekend and then 2 showings Monday and 1 Tuesday and 2 Wednesday, and it's just no rhyme or reason to it. And a lot of the buyers out there right now are either in the first-time buyer range, moving from out of state, divorce and looking to separate households, things along those lines. You're not getting a lot of local buyers or local sellers selling to buy another home right now just due to the interest rate environment and what we consider the rate lock theory of what's keeping the market where it's at. And so really we're looking at presentation. Sometimes we have to put a little bit of love back into the house in order to get that back out of it.
And let's talk about that, because we are, there's times that we see that sellers will make some updates to the home to make it more presentable, and other times that they say, well, let's do a credit towards paint,
Correct.
Let's do a credit towards carpet. And I can tell you a couple instances in the last couple months where I've seen that. I just showed a house the other day that they've got a dog. The dog has done what dogs do on carpet sometimes, and so the house has an odor and it needs new carpet. It's a relatively new home. It's only about 4 years old. And they said, well, we'll credit for new flooring. Well, how many buyers are walking into that home and discounting they're now seeing this home as decrepit when it's a 4-year-old home that looks great other than the floor. And then another one, we ended up selling it to the buyer. There was significant days on market because of condition. It was very dank inside. Some weird repairs had been made, and old appliances, and it was kind of an estate sale kind of thing. And by the time we were scheduling a showing, they were saying, hey, we're going to, just so you know, it's going to be painted this week. We're putting in new appliances this week. Knowing that and what we had seen, we put in the offer. By the time we were done with inspections, there were brand new stainless appliances in there. Right after, about a week after inspections, when we had done asked for a couple repairs, they repainted. We walked in there for a walkthrough. You couldn't
house.
It was a completely different house, and that house would have attracted significantly more buyers if they would have just done those repairs up front instead of testing the market and let's see if we can. Because if the house looks like it needs a lot of repairs, guess what? You're going to be attracting investors who are going to lowball you.
Correct. And you're just buyers are going to move on to the next one that the seller did invest in and get it show ready, and it also leads to the idea of, well, okay, I got to do that, and then I was going to paint because I don't like the paint color or whatnot, but now I'm adding that up, and it also leads to, well, what else have they let defer? What else haven't they taken care of? And that's what buyers are immediately starting to think. I always say we want to eliminate the reasons they won't write an offer on it, and not give them reasons and then try to come behind and say, well, we'll do this for you instead.
And we want to eliminate the subtraction of value.
Absolutely.
Because if we're walking in, we're going, oh, I need to paint. The house is put up because it is priced for the condition, but the condition of the buyer's mind is less. And so, well, I have to paint. Well, not everybody wants to paint. Well, I want to.
Right.
So now they've just taken thousands off the value.
That's the whole thing is that, no matter where you price it, the mindset is I got to offer less because of the condition. It doesn't matter that we've already factored that in, because then you can't go back and convince a buyer of something after the fact. And agents aren't pulling comps on every house they go show, so they wouldn't necessarily know that ahead of time, even if you put it in the listing, because not everybody's telling the truth when they say that. So
and comps are an issue too with limited inventory and limited availability of comps. Sometimes we're in an area where, we've got this infill neighborhood of newer homes surrounded by older homes, And so we have to substantiate that value. But if the buyer's walking in and going, oh, well, this, and this, now where we've taken the value according to comps, according to condition, according to all that stuff, now they're going, well, maybe not.
Yep. No, and I mean, I've had it recently where, we had one where I had, recommended and really, pushed for them to replace the carpet. They've been in there a long time. They chose not to. We had 16 showings over those 3 days that we were on the market. We ended up going under contract, but it was not quite the full price that if I believe that had been done, we would have gotten over the list price because there would have been competing offers because they could have moved right in and it is done. And it's just a challenge because buyers and most agents don't know costs of things. So even if the carpet was $3,400, if you don't have that, or if they don't know that, they're going to add it up much higher than what it actually is. And so it just goes back to eliminating things that the buyer feels that they need to ask for in addition to what we're looking for, and doing everything you can. Pricing's a big one right now. I'm still of the opinion that it's really hard to underprice a home in this market due to the low inventory. It is not hard to overprice, and then you're chasing the market backwards, and because buyers are more savvy today. Money costs more. Loans cost more. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not as willing to just go because rates were so low. It was easy to raise it $20,000 because over 30 years at 2.8%, it didn't matter. It matters now, and by overpricing, either based on emotion, on what they want, or the things that aren't going to factor into what makes a buyer make a decision on a house, you end up. And even with I don't think days on market are as important, but they do to buyers still, and so it can
to buyers and buyers agents will consider days on market when they're making their offer. They're not necessarily going to consider it when they're going to look at a property. No. But when they're considering their offer,
it's one of the first questions every buyer asks if they haven't seen it. Know the days already, so I think that's a big part of it, and just understanding really. We understand with the lack of or reduced demand, we want to be the next one that sells because the less time you're on the market, the more you're going to sell for. So what are we competing with? And right now we're back into a market where what's sold isn't necessarily as important right now because that could have been, rates were at a different point 3 months ago, 2 months ago. And so it's, what are we competing with? What's active? How does ours compare? Are we going to be the next sale? And what's under contract? And not that we know that that's what they got for it, but we know that was the price that caused them to get an offer.
Yep.
So I think, understanding, and I think from our experience and having, the amount of active inventory we have and under contract, we have a pretty good handle on what's selling, what's being shown, what's not, what's causing homes to sell, what's causing homes not to. More than just data driven, more it's actual experience going through it right now and being a part of that and being an active participant in the market this whole year, because it's changed from January through March, then March through June, and now we're in this, and it hopefully will change again in the fourth quarter if Steve will lower rates this year.
So what we're looking at just goes back to price, presentation, and don't put up roadblocks for buyers.
And ask questions of the people you're trusting to sell in terms of how many are they selling in this market? What do they know about current rates and what the impact that has? Where are buyers coming from? Ask that, because that's a big thing. I was talking to an agent today on our team that, I'm at 6 listings this month signed, and none of them are selling to buy another home here. They're either you're either for divorce through. I've got two moving out of state. I've got one moving into independent care. Things like that. And so, understanding where our sellers are coming from, but also where our buyers are coming from, and the majority of are either first time or out of state, corporate reload, things like that. So we've got to take advantage of that and market to them in a way that we're priced correctly. We present. Because we're only going to get one shot. We can't, we're going to have 10 more showings. If I couldn't let that one in, it's not a big deal. We can't do that. And we can't be, couldn't get the dog out of there this time, or, I had to, or I couldn't leave the house at this time. And that, those are things that are really just kind of going to void that showing almost, really.
Yeah, and if if you are looking for an agent in this market, one of the things that you should be doing is looking and seeing what other listings they've had recently. Yeah. If you can't find any listings for them recently, they don't know this market. If you pull up their listings and it's a cell phone photo, or it's dark and dank and it's not a professional photo, the first showings are not through the front door. They're online.
Well, if every agent, we always talk about every agent has a marketing budget, they have a brokerage budget they have to pay, and then that's their income, right? And so when things get tough and sales decrease, which we talked about, going from 10,000 homes selling a month down to 6,000 is a big difference. And so the cream rises to the top. And so the ones that are struggling, they're going to cut the marketing first, right? I mean, those are things that they can't, until it sells, they don't have the money to pay for.
Exactly.
So those are things that are important.
This video is brought to you by Klaus Team Real Estate Solutions. The Klaus Team is different. With the Klaus Team, you have someone on your side. Where you live and make memories is important. We have more unique strategies than anyone else to help you accomplish what matters most to you. We can help you with traditional real estate as well as other options such as our lease purchase programs. We can help you buy first then sell, and we can bring you instant offers. We're here to help our neighbors achieve the American dream and help them build wealth through home ownership. For more info or to start your home search, visit us online at klausteam.com.
So let's talk about some mistakes that buyers are making.
On the other side of the coin,
we're seeing mistakes on both sides of the...
Absolutely. Well, to Kraig's point, there is that limited inventory. So if you're entering the market or potentially going to be entering the market as a buyer, there are pretty common mistakes that most of them make. And the number one, and I think we've talked about it multiple times on this podcast, and I continue to preach it, is looking for a home before applying for a mortgage.
Yes.
It literally, because again, you as a listing agent is not going to accept without that qualification letter.
Right. We're not even going to present it. Correct.
Right. So please get pre-approved.
Yeah, and we hear it all the time. It's my husband says he'll fill out the loan app if we find the right house. Well, guess what? You'll find the right house, and by the time you get your pre-qual, that house is gone.
Well, and that's the reason why it's such a common mistake, because again, as you alluded to, we're looking at the first viewings online. So people are at home, husband, wife, weekend, evening, kids are in bed, whatever. They're looking at homes online. They fall in love with something, and they call their buyer's agent. They call Scott, and they're like, "Hey, saw this one over here. We want to make an offer on it." He's like, "Great. Are you pre-approved?" And then that's when I usually get the phone call. So again, it's having that pre-approval already in hand, because again, if it's priced correctly, if it looks great, just like they saw it online, it looked great to them online, guaranteed that's going to be one of those homes that maybe has those multiple offers that we're talking about.
And one of the things that we see too often is, you'll have a home with extended days on market. It's been on there for a while. You fall in love with it. Guess what? Those are the times that, we've had a home that it hasn't seen any offer in 2 weeks, and all of a sudden we got multiple offers.
Correct.
It just happens all the time. So even if it's got days on market, you still need to be ready to act.
You have to be ready.
Well, and I think one of the things important too about the mortgage side of it first is, based on already having this figured out, if you do this, what your monthly budget is, what your housing payment's going to be. So if you happen to see one that was a little bit above that, you could quickly kind of do the math to see, could we afford this another $20 a month by going up this much in price, versus if you're just going out there blind.
You have no idea.
Right, and mortgage calculators online don't factor in a lot of the things that actually matter.
Well, and I always compare sometimes home shopping to, auto. People go out looking for a new car. So you walk onto a new car lot, whether you're looking at one that's listed at $80,000 or $40,000, that car financer is going to get you into that $80,000 car. They're going to find a way to get you into it. And back in the mortgage days of 2000 to 2007, we could find a way to get you into that as well. But that's not the case anymore. I mean, so again, it's just really getting prepared. So if you're thinking about buying a home, just take the time to get pre-approved with a trusted professional, because then you're ready. Like Kraig said, then you know what your budget is. You know if you're truly ready or not, and maybe you've got to wait a little bit.
And that first step is pretty easy. It's a link. Steve can send you a link. It's right at the bottom. There's a couple things you got to...
In most cases, it can be even just be a conversation of 15, 20 minutes. And if you really want to get pre-approved after that initial conversation, it's that simple. Yep. It really is. Most times there's not much paper changing hands. The other one that we see pretty consistently is waiting for the unicorn.
Yeah.
And
which is a struggle on low inventory.
it's very much a struggle. And what I mean by that is, what I see is buyers that are pre-approved, that they're out there looking, is that they're bypassing on quality homes that just don't check every box.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in a low inventory environment, you could be passing up on an opportunity for a home that maybe just needed a little something. And again, it kind of harkens back to having that trusted professional, that if you have a quality buyer's agent, they're going to tell you,
Yeah,
like,
and
hey,
one
this
of
is
the
a simple
things-
fix. This is a simple correction.
Correct.
Those
And
types of
if
things.
it goes on too long, you could be pricing yourself out of that location
Yeah, absolutely.
because values are climbing.
Yep.
And if you really want to be in a specific location, you're just looking for that house that checks out every single
Right.
box. The longer that you go, then all of a sudden you're going to realize that zip code is probably not going to be an option anymore.
And maybe I'm speaking more directly to first-time home buyers, but again, looking for that unicorn, and a lot of times they get locked into their mind, like, oh, I'm going to live in this home forever, and we're going to raise our kids, and we're going to have a dog, and we're going to have Sunday barbecues, and probably not.
No, 5 to 7 years.
5
is
to
forever
7 years.
in Maricopa County.
That's
so
for 5 to 7 is forever in Maricopa.
average home.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we know.
But yeah, a lot of those changes are often pretty easy to make.
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the other common buyer mistakes, and Kraig alluded to it, is making a decision based on emotion rather than sticking to your financial limitations. And again, it goes back to getting pre-approved, because they'll get into a home or fall in love with a home that's maybe priced out of that financial limitation to where they're comfortable, to where they could have buyer's remorse, that maybe they don't qualify for it. So again, going back to the pre-approval, getting pre-approved, you set those limits based off the budget you've discussed with me.
Yes.
That if you do find something, well, then maybe give me a call, because if there's no HOA, well, then maybe that makes a difference, because it's $25,000 higher, or maybe rates have dipped a little bit, or maybe property taxes. So there's a lot of factors, but again, it's a lot of times where I see buyers make a mistake is they get caught up in a home that they love, and kind of ties into that unicorn.
Yeah.
So they all, unicorns
and
and
they
love.
want to fit their budget to the house instead of the other way around.
Right. The other one that I see quite a bit is not checking your credit and then being careless with your credit after the fact.
Talk with if you've already started in the loan process. Talk with your lender if you have any questions on, should I go get this furniture right now on credit? Should I get this car? Should I
As a
do
listing
this?
agent,
The answer's
don't
no.
buy- As a
Yeah,
listing
the
agent,
answer's
I'm saying
no.
don't buy anything. Please don't.
No, and
But
that's
should I pay this bill? Should I pay that bill? If you ever have any questions, just ask your
ask
lender.
your LO. But I will tell you, if I'm not your LO and they don't answer the phone or your text messages, is please. You're under contract. You've got your close of escrows coming up in 3-4 weeks, whatever that time frame is. Don't make any new purchases. Don't acquire any new debts. Don't go out and obtain any new financing prior to your close
Even
of
if
escrow.
it's zero interest for 18 months, no payments.
No.
But if home ownership is on your radar for the next year and a half,
Right.
let's pay a lot of attention to credit.
You
usage.
have to pay attention to your credit.
Yes.
If home ownership is your goal, then that's another conversation that you can have with a trusted professional like myself is talk about your credit. Like, hey, this is where we're at today. Is cleaning this up going to make a difference? Is making these payments, is making double payments, those types of things you can talk through with me, and I can tell you if that's really going to be helpful or not. The other one that I see quite often is overlooking other types of programs. Everybody seems to get caught up, especially those with better credit, 720 plus in most cases, is overlooking FHA, VA, and I don't know that USDA is even available in most areas in Arizona, but kind of overlooking those FHA and VA options for financing. And people are like, well, I don't, I've heard it, so I'm only quoting what I've heard. Is,
I don't need that.
Well, I have a 740 FICO score. Why would I take an FHA loan? FHA is for people with lesser credit or worse credit or collections or no, that's not. They help because they promote home ownership, but I just did a quick thing based off the average purchase loan of $417,000, which is about a $425,000 purchase with 3.5% down. Fannie, Freddie versus FHA. FHA with a 741 FICO score is $153 a month less.
Yep.
Because the interest rate on a Fannie Freddie today is about 7 3/8, and it's about 6 3/4 on an FHA loan.
Yep.
And even the PMI is less because you don't have that magical 760 that Fannie and Freddie want. So don't overlook it. And especially I'm speaking to the veterans or active military members out there, if you have eligibility to utilize your VA entitlement to buy a home, don't let anyone talk you out of utilizing it. Talk to a trusted loan professional, because you're going to bypass PMI, you're going to bypass having the need for a down payment, and you're going to get a lower interest rate than most cases, even the FHA. You're probably going to be at least in line with an FHA loan, and sometimes an eighth to a quarter lower.
Well, and keep in mind too with rates, we were talking about this earlier because I get emails from lenders all the time with today's rates, and you have to know what that really means, because a lot of times they'll, it's 7.25%, and then it's like with 1 point or 1%, and most people don't know what that means, and so understanding that you're comparing apples to apples, and Matt, that's why always talking to somebody, understanding what rates or what's involved in that and what causes that is really important too.
Well, today, we're talking Wednesday, the 16th of August, the Mortgage Bankers Association in their weekly survey. The average 30-year fixed rate for Fannie Freddie today with 5% down is 7.36%, with an average cost of 0.7, like basically just 3/4 of a point. So what that is 3/4 of a percentage of your purchase price. So if it's 1% on a $400,000 loan, it's probably about $3,600, $3,400 is your cost for that rate. So that's to your point of the discounted. You'll see it advertised as a rate, and then they get the smallest font they can possibly type with to put it in the bottom. So there is some cost to it, but again, most of them have that because you're advertising a lower rate. The other couple things that I see buyers make is moving too fast and or failing to heed the advice of the trusted professionals you've put in place. Your agents, your finance, your mortgage, even if it's a parent or somebody that you truly trust that knows what they're talking about, they just move too fast. They just want to get through the process. And then the last one that I'll touch on, these are the top 7, is failing to line up that down payment in your source of funds to close.
Yes.
Not knowing where that truly is going to come from, especially if mom or dad or grandma or great uncle Steve offered you, a gift to help you buy your first home. Make sure you line that up with great uncle Steve before you go out shopping and say, hey, remember we had this discussion at Christmas or my birthday that you were going to help me, what does that look like? What's that figure? So that And
we want to have liquid funds right out the gate for earnest money. We need to have that. We're going to need to have about $500 or so for an inspection. We're going to appraisal. We're going to have some upfront costs.
Just know where it's coming from. If you've got those pieces that $2 or $3 grand, $4 or $5 grand you need up front in a checking or savings, great. So where's your down payment coming from? Where's that large percentage coming from? Is it coming from additional savings, investment accounts, retirement accounts, or those gifts, or a combination thereof? Is lining that up and knowing where it's coming from, so that again you're prepared.
And if you're waiting for it from the Nigerian prince,
so is he still out there?
On the listing side too, is like we have in our listing agreements that we won't present offers where the lender has not verified down payment and reserves and understand that ahead of time. So those are things that need to be done, period, in order to even be out writing an offer. If you're out with somebody that doesn't think that you need to do that or will do it after, I've had it where Saturday and buyers and agent, they love the home, they want to write an offer, they can't get a hold of the lender, and by Monday, the time they get a hold of them, we're already under contract with somebody else because they didn't take those steps. So
and if you're cash too, that comes into play too. You have to do a proof of funds, and a photograph of piles of money in a suitcase are not going to work.
And I've had that. I actually had a handwritten note that said, I certify I have this much in my safe. And I said, well, that's great. That doesn't help. But, and so unless you want to give it to me in the meantime, let me hold on to it for my client. Otherwise, no, it's not how it works. So,
Well, and just, like Kraig has that discussion, that consult with a potential seller up front, and can head off some of these potential pitfalls or mistakes that are made or can be made. I'm doing the same thing in that initial consult with a potential buyer. I'm going to let you know maybe FHA financing is better. I'm going to find out the source of your down payment ahead of time. We're going to talk about checking your credit and what things you might be able to work on, or are you ready at this point? It's all of those things that we've discussed. Again, it's working with that trusted professional to assist you through the process up front. Like before we put a sign in your yard, before I give you a letter and send you out there.
Yep.
Let's get you prepared.
And that's on both sides. Yeah, I mean, you want to be a seller before we go to market. We want to have it ready to go. You get one chance to hit that first impression, and that's your best chance right there. So same thing. You want to make sure you're doing your diligence and making sure you know where things are and you're lined up and you're ready to go.
100%. We're here to make a successful experience for everybody.
And I'm excited to see what that market will look like next month when we record this.
And if you're thinking about making a change in your current living situation, whether selling or buying, just reach out to us. You can talk to Kraig, myself, Steve, or any of our other team members here at the Klaus team. KlausTeam.com, 354-7344. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks for spending time with us this week at State 48 Homeowner, the ins and outs of owning an Arizona home. You can connect with us for more information, submit topics you'd like us to discuss further, and you can see relevant videos, give us feedback, answer your real estate questions, and more at state48homeowner.com.